Hello. Hi, everyone.
There you are. There's your cute
Am I
face.
showing up now?
Yep.
There we go. Okay, so it's 11:59. We'll wait one more minute. Good morning / afternoon, depending on where you're at. Welcome. Thanks for joining. I'm super excited for today. We've got our models previewing back here for you. I see some people hopping on. Hi. I wish I could see all of your faces. Hi. So for those of you that haven't joined a live with us yet, in the background, I have Jessica Mills on the phone. It's her birthday. Feel free to say happy birthday. I have Jessica Mills on the phone. So if you hear a voice sort of coming through the background, that's who that is. She is our VP of Education and Shows. She's fantastic. I'm sure you know that, especially if you've been on a live with us before. So what we're going to do today, we have an hour. We're going to go over pop roots is what we keep calling it, but this is a trend that we've seen around for a while, most famously on Billie Eilish, right, with the lime green roots and the black ends. And I think that it's a very bold look that I love. I think a lot of people loved it, but it felt so bold. It didn't always feel applicable to everyone, right? So I kind of took that and made a couple different versions of that same vibe, that same feel. So it feels like something that we can put on our clients just with different levels of commitment or with different levels of boldness or brightness. Hi, hello. I see people. Hello from Keune, Ireland. Oh, hello, Ireland. So we're going to chat a little bit about each one, and then I'm going to show you some tips and tricks for when you're applying a really bright, really bold color on like blonde hair, right? So I think the first thing before you're actually applying the color is sort of talking to your client and feeling out how bold they want to go, how long do they want it to last, right? Because with her, for example, this is what I would call like our higher commitment because it's on blonde hair. It's a really bold color. So you get a strong pop, a big finish, but this is a color that's going to stay in the hair a little bit longer, right? So longer commitment, higher commitment, biggest impact. This is not going to be the same client as this, right? This is like our mini baby pastel pop. So both blonde hair, but this one much brighter will stay much longer where we have our little pastel pop. If you saw Cheetah Basso's live last week, one thing she was talking about were the spring trends moving in. Thank God, right? We're going into spring finally, and it's a lot of those pastel colors. So this is just like a mini pop, a mini pastel. So this is very low commitment. When you talk to your client, you can sort of have that conversation when you do your consultation and figure out, do you want it to be something that's around for, 5 shampoos? Go super pastel. Do you want it to be something that sticks around for a long time and like this is their vibe, this is what they want? Go for a super bright color. If you have sort of that right in the middle, right? This is our middle commitment. And this is on dark hair. I put it up in a ponytail so you could sort of see. This is one of my favorites. So if I have it on my phone too. Okay, there we go. There we go. If you see, we just have the pop in the bangs. So when her hair is up, you can see the little bits of green, right? Little bits coming through. Nothing too screaming or too drastic, but she still has it. She still feels the vibe. She still feels cool. The only reason why I called this one the medium commitment is because she has dark hair, right? So since she has dark hair, in order to get the roots to pop, we have to bleach it. But I think that that's still something, it's just in a little area, not a huge commitment, especially if they just want to do it one time. So we've got our high, medium, and low, and then I'll go through a little bit with each one and give you my tips and tricks. So first I'm going to pull up. This one I think is my favorite, partially because I feel like this little, it's like French Bob moved to LA and became a surfer. So for her, I know this is an Olivia mannequin. So if you are familiar with Olivia mannequins, when they come, they're a level 10. So the best way when you're using Color Chameleon, which is our direct dye with Keune, it's everything in this packaging. The best way to get the brightest result is going to be putting it on a level 10. So starting with blonde, level 10 hair, the formula for her roots, I call it like radioactive regrowth because it's so bright. So the formula that I used for her is equal parts of the orange and the yellow, and then this mixture equal parts with clear, just so it felt a little bit brighter, a little less deep. Now, because she has an undercut, she has really short hair on the sides, I didn't go through and do a pop root on the sides because you aren't really going to see it, right? So we just did it on the top. Now, what is different about hers and what I like a lot, something that always made me sort of steer a little bit further away, is we don't want it to look just like regrowth, right? We don't want to just have a harsh line that's 1 inch down. So I did sort of a mini color placement. It's not a placement in a sense that you need to whip out a bunch of foils and do a lot of thinking and planning ahead. It's just working off of her head shape. So we know when we do bangs, right? We want to find that top of the head. What we're doing in this is still finding that top of the head, but you can see right here where there's that little split. So this is going to be the first area that we just part the hair and section it away. So part that hair, we're taking a diagonal back. Now, what I think is fun about this, I use this placement for shadow roots all the time. The only difference really is that with a shadow root, typically we're using a more natural color, a darker blonde color, whatever it is. And for this, we're using this radioactive orange, right? So I'm going to show you the partings and the placement, and then I'm going to pull over a different mannequin so I can show you the brush that I like to use so that you can get that hard stop line without pulling your brush through the hair and then getting all those little hairs that pick up on the color that you didn't necessarily want there. So, pardon my sip. With her, I'm going to go through and show you. I think you can see it really well. Our first section is just barely tapped, right? It's just barely there so that if she throws her hair around, if she puts it up, it doesn't feel like an inch of orange, right? It still feels like she just got her hair done. Now, what we're doing here is keeping our line, sort of like in hair cutting where we have a stationary guide, we're keeping our line right here. And as we pull forward, pulling everything to that line every single time, same spot, same spot. So if she wore her hair combed forward, you would see that line. She doesn't though, right? She wears it back. So then that line kind of softens and you end up getting just that little peak of darkness. Right where her head rounds and we clipped that away, this is where we'll start that whole process over. So all you're going to do with that first section that you pull down, see where it starts over. Now this first one, we're going back up to, you could do a ½ inch, a quarter of an inch. That's sort of your artistic decision. So same thing, stationary guide, and then we're just pulling everything a little bit forward. The last section is where on the back of her head, we're very used to finding the high point, and then this is where our bangs go. But there's another curve back here, right? So find that high point again, right where the head curves backwards toward the crown. That's going to be your last section, your last stationary guide. So then you'll over direct everything forward and get those little peaks and valleys from the side. So it's not just regrowth, right? But you get some dimension and some varying. Now you can make the choice if you want to blend the line instead of having that like stop line. I think that's, again, just an artistic decision. But I think this is a super fun way to do it because, again, it doesn't just look like regrowth, like we didn't do her hair, like we didn't color it, and her natural color is radioactive orange. But it gives some fun dimension, some fun texture. So look number one, higher commitment. And again, higher commitment mostly because the color is so bright on such a level 10 canvas that if she comes back in a week and is like, actually, I don't want this color, you're gonna have a much harder time getting this deep tone out versus our lilac, which is the same concept, but much lighter, right? This is just a little baby. So I'm gonna pull over a different mannequin because I really wanna show you what I think is sort of the star of the show in any precision, creative placement where you need a really hard stop, okay? So I use this a lot if you've ever done like a dip dye where you really need that line to be solid where it starts, but I also use this trick for a bleach retouch because the trick is using this rubber brush. So if you've ever purchased, check with your distributor depending on what you, what they might call it. Where I get my stuff, it's the color accessories kit. So it comes with this little brush, this rubber brush, and then another like fan brush for blending. This is the star of the show. So when I'm going through my mannequin, I'm going to take my first section and just kind of mimic that hairline, diagonal back. Now, when you go to place this, this is the one that I really do recommend putting a foil down so you don't accidentally give your client, you know, blue or orange forehead, whatever it is. So for her, I'm going to show you with blue just because it's a deeper color so you'll see it. I'm going to dip in my blue, but because this rubber brush doesn't have bristles the way that like any traditional color brush, all of these bristles are going to sort of get in the hair, which is great when we want it to, but then when we go to pull out, you can always see, I'm gonna see if I can capture this for you guys. So when I put the brush in, you see how it just picks up hairs? Almost no matter what I do, it's just gonna pick those hairs up. So when I go in with my rubber brush, because there are no bristles, it's not going to pick up any hairs. So again, for this circumstance, it's great because I can just tap, and if I want it to just be on that first like quarter of an inch, there's no problem doing that. It doesn't pull any of the color down because it doesn't pick up any of those baby hairs. Again, once you use this brush for a bleach retouch, you won't ever use another brush for a bleach retouch. So just so I remember where we're at, I'm going to find that high point again, and then right where it lifts off, where her bangs would start, I'm going to take diagonal back section and just clip that away. And this is just to remind me that's where I'm going to start the process over. So for the front section, put your foil down if you're bringing it all the way to the hairline. Now, right where that line ends, that's where I'm going to keep pulling my color to. So make sure you're laying everything kind of in the same direction rather than pulling one side to the left and the other side to the right. You want it all to agree, so to speak. You'll have the easiest job getting that stationary guide the same. It's just like cutting, right? Or distribution of hair. So I'm going to go in and pull right down to that same line. Another reason why I really love this brush, if you need to flip it upside down so that you can press in that hard stop, again, it's not going to pick up any hair. It's super straight line to begin with. So then my next section, diagonal back. Let this fall forward. I like to really hold the hair in place because I think it makes it a little bit easier to see that previous line right through that section. And then I can just sort of make my marker. Okay, awesome. And then bring this one further and further down. So again, you can take this and use it for a shadow root if you want to. You can take this and use it for any sort of just base color, because it just over direct, same line. I personally like whenever you're doing some sort of creative all over color, whether that be just on the roots or again like a shadow root, I think simple is key. We do enough complicated work with foiling and, you know, is this balayage, is this teasing, is this baby lights, is this a combination of all of them? So I think keeping some of this stuff as simple as possible, you can still have a lot of impact, but you don't
Alicia, we have a question for you. Did you place cotton between the last piece of the first section and the first piece of the second section to avoid bleeding?
Wonderful question. I didn't place cotton, I just laid a foil. If you are somebody who would rather place cotton, you can do that. I'll show you after this next section. So this will be my last section of our first sort of round, our first zone on the head, so to speak. So pulling this down, and then right when I'm gonna pull my first redo, right, my first reposition of that stationary guide, I can just lay a foil since all of this is working above the round, above the parietal ridge. I can just lay a foil like this. And it'll stick to the color that you placed down. So then your next section, same parting, just diagonal back parting, kind of working with the head shape. Pull this forward. And again, I like to sort of, for lack of better phrasing, just kind of smash it down so I can really see what I'm working with. And then pick up my color, pull that down. But again, I'm starting that whole process over, so I'm not going to come as far down as I was on the first one. And this is where it's up to you if you want the first one to just be 1/4 of an inch, if you want it to be 1/2 inch, if you want to go from 1/2 inch at the hairline back to 2 inches, that you can decide on how much you want it to show. The longer you pull it down, the longer the root is, the more it will show when they're just sort of walking around. Because you can see obviously on our radioactive roots, the longest part of the root is about 1.5 inches. The shortest part of the root is about 1/2 inch. Compared to our low commitment pastel root all over, it's just 1/2 inch. So it's gonna be a lot less showy. It's just gonna be right at that regrowth. So again, pulling this forward and keeping that stationary guide, so going right to where I went on that last section. And just for sort of comparison, I want to show you, this is using the rubber brush. And you can see I'm not struggling to make that hard line stop. That's just sort of what happens when you use that brush. So I'm going to tilt it forward a little bit. And then I'm going to pick up just a regular brush and show you the difference. When I try to do this with a regular brush, it's not that it's impossible. It's just, you know, I don't want to, if I don't have to think about it, I don't want to. And when I use the rubber brush, I don't have to think about it. When I use the bristle brush, if this is something that happens to you, where you go to pull this section forward, right? and then you put this down, and you're good, you're good, you're good. But as you can see, as I lift it up, all these little hairs are sticking to it. And those will start to come down, come down. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell through the camera, but there's already little dots of blue through here just from picking that brush up. So you can imagine if you're doing the whole head, 75 sections in, that's when it can start to look really muddy, and it can feel, as a stylist, I think it can feel kind of overwhelming, right? Because you're like, okay, I want to do this, and then this becomes your focus, is not getting it on those little hairs and trying to keep a clean line and trying to keep a clean section. I know whenever I've done a color, whether it be semi-color, just like a red, or color chameleon, whenever I do a color and the ends are blonde, it's like the #1 goal, right? Is to keep the blonde clean. So the rubber brush has made a huge, huge difference. And if you do want to go the softer route and you don't want that harsh line of demarcation, something that I think helps prevent the color transfer into the ends is, depending on how much length you have, you can either put conditioner through the ends, or what I've done sometimes is when I pull my section forward, rather than just going in with that blue on the root, I'll lay just sort of right here where I'm afraid it's going to transfer. I'll lay clear or conditioner or something as a barrier. You can put, this is the color chameleon clear. I like to use this partially because I think the texture of it is really easy to work with, and it kind of lays down. It has more of a gel consistency, so it's going to lay on the hair versus soaking into the hair like conditioner. But either one will help create that barrier so that you don't have the color transfer or the like messy line where you're trying to get that harsh line. So same thing if you're ever doing a dip dye where you just want the color on the ends, start with that rubber brush. When you lay your section down, you'll get a clean line every single time. I worked a show, it was Premiere Orlando 2018, 19. Time is weird now. So we'll say recently, I worked Premiere Orlando, and I will never forget, we were doing dip dye bangs. So just a full bang, just the tips of the bangs were really, really vibrant colors. And we did the rubber brush trick, but one little struggle that I had was we were trying to make this dip dye a curve. So Chris Combs is another educator that we have. He's fantastic. And he just kind of walked in and very simply said, well, why don't you cut the brush? Why don't you cut the rubber? And I looked at him like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, yeah, if you're trying to create a rounded shape, a rounded dip dye, a rounded bang, why are you doing it with a square? And I just was like, I don't know, because it's a square, right? Because I didn't think about that. And he just, simple as can be. So we just cut the edges off, and then we had a round brush. And I think that that's what's kind of nice about this. As long as you're staying up here, you can customize the shape if you need it to be curved because you want to create a curved line, or you can keep it straight like this. So now in my kit, I have some that are cut on a curve and some that are just as they come that are straight. But these are my heart and soul. It's the only brush I use now for bleach retouches for the exact same reason, so you don't get that overlap. If you have somebody that's naturally a level, 1, 2, 3, but they're platinum blonde and you want to avoid that overlap as much as possible, try it with a rubber brush, and I think that you will find it makes a really big difference. So that's look number 1. We feel good. Do we have any questions about it at all?
We do. How long will these colors last, Alicia?
So it depends on a couple things. Porosity is going to play a factor into it, and then also how deep the tone is. So this girl right here, I would expect this to easily last, depending on how often she shampoos and what kind of shampoo she uses, I would easily expect this to last like 20 shampoos, maybe even a little bit longer if she's using like our Color Brilliance, our Tinted Color Care, high quality shampoos. And this hair is pretty healthy considering how light it is. If she had very like dry, porous hair that's kind of been through a lot, it's going to let go of it a lot faster. So this lovely mannequin right here, where we have the pastel root, because this is so light to begin with, this was 15 parts clear and 1 part the violet, this deep violet color. So I just made sort of a pastel lilac. This I would expect, because it is so light, to last maybe 5 to 10 shampoos, depending again on what she's shampooing with, if she's shampooing in scalding hot water or cold water. But I think the biggest thing whenever you're talking to your client, whether you're starting at a color that's this vibrant or you're starting at a color that's this pastel, get them to understand sort of the process that it goes through. So I like to make a joke with my client. If you love it, it's going to fade quickly. But if you hate it, it's going to fade quickly, right? If you go home and you're like, oh my gosh, why did I put purple? It's going to fade quickly. If you love it, save your shampoos, because every time you shampoo a direct dye, it's going to change a little bit. So it'll have a life cycle. This one isn't going to change a ton on your first shampoo, your second shampoo. This one will change a little bit more on your first shampoo, your second shampoo. And I think it's important that we say that before the client leaves, so that it's not a situation where they didn't know that. They come back a month later and they're like, hey, can you fix this? It came out, right? But that's the nature of the game. That's the nature of a direct dye. So it depends, but I would say deeper colors, if they're using good shampoo, brighter colors like this, on healthy hair, you can easily get 20 shampoos. The lighter the color, the less longevity you're going to have. And what will always play a factor is what shampoo, how often, and the temperature of your water. Whenever you're doing these bright, bright colors, try to get them to use as cool of water as possible. I know a lot of the time we're in the shower and we don't want to take a cold shower, but if you can, don't shampoo when you're in the shower. Flip your head under the sink and shampoo in as cold of water as possible if you're trying to preserve it. So I hope that helps. Do we have any other questions?
We do. Actually, we have 2 more.
Okay.
How many ounces are in the tube, and can you add conditioner to the color to make a color bomb?
So color bomb, if you want to explain what you mean by color bomb, just so I can maybe help point you in the right direction for what you're referencing. But how many ounces are in the tube? It's 2.1. So it's the same if you use Tintacolor, if you use Semi-Color. They come in the same size tubes. It's the same tube. It's just, color chameleon. And then can you add conditioner? What we recommend you add is the clear. And part of that is this. When you get the Color Chameleon kit, that's why you get so much more clear than you do in the tube of color, because you can really use a lot of clear and make your color go much farther. I use a lot of clear, like this is half clear, and you can tell it's still really vibrant. The clear just made it a little bit brighter because we didn't take it all the way up to like 20 parts clear, right? So the clear is 9.3 ounces. This is the best thing you're going to use to dilute it. A lot of that is just because of the viscosity, the texture of the product is the same, so they're going to mix really well together. If you put it in a conditioner, it just, sometimes certain things with certain conditioners, the pH can throw it off. It might do something that you don't expect. So I think using the clear is going to be your best bet, and it's going to give you the most predictable result when it comes to like diluting or lightening a color. What other questions do we have?
I think too, if they're looking for a color bomb type of thing, Keune is a great resource.
Oh, so color bomb, you mean like a color to send home with the client?
That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
That could be an option.
Yeah, and I think I was just gonna say, like Jessica said, I think Keune is a great option, especially because you have a lot of different colors you can add. There's a copper, there's a red, there's a violet, so you can kind of adjust that for the client. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly what she meant.
Yeah, okay.
So it can be diluted, but we dilute with clear, not conditioner, and refresh the color at home.
Yeah. So
Keune.
in salon,
other
clear.
question, does the color transfer when shampooed, and how can the client minimize that?
That's a great question. So generally speaking, no. But I think it's always going to depend on porosity and the color that you're using. So for example, if she were a real person, right, and she heat styled her hair and her hair were really dry and it was something that like I was telling her to use Vital Nutrition or satin oil, some of our more moisturizing stuff, yeah, you might get some transfer just because this is so bright and this is so light and like a clean blonde. So I would say the best way to minimize that is going to be shampooing with cool water. The colder, the better. So with her, we put a little bit of like a peachy tone on her ends, so it would kind of camouflage any bleeding or any color transfer that happened. But with her, I rinsed with as cold water as my hands could be in, and you can tell because the line is still really strong. You didn't have a lot of bleeding down into this. And I think the cool water is the biggest thing. And then just understanding if they have a lot of porosity, maybe put a little conditioner on their hair, on their blonde hair before you're rinsing out the color. But I think cold water is your best friend. What other questions do we have?
That's it right now.
Okay, beautiful. So I'm gonna pull her over. I know I keep kind of referencing her, but I just want to kind of go through and show you a little bit about her. So this was just a little baby taproot. So same concept, right? Blonde hair with a little pop of color at the base. But I think what's nice about this look is when she pulls it back, you can really see it. If she was like, I want to put my hair up in pigtails, you can see all the way through. But from far away, it's not something where she's like shouting that she has purple in her hair, right? It's mostly blonde. But then when you get up close, you see this fun, sort of sassy violet. And when you talk about maintenance, this is going to be something that by the time she comes back to get her blonde touched up, the color chameleon will be gone. So you don't have to worry about, okay, well, what am I going to do on the next round when this has moved down here? Do I have to lighten that out? Don't worry about it because it's just a pastel color. It's going to come out. And then it kind of can inch her into doing some more fun colors, again, without it being a huge commitment and without it being super bright. Because, you know, like Cheetah was saying last week, we're moving into spring. Pastels are something that clients find really easy to come into, right? Because it's a softer color. I know Cheetah said this too, purple and pink are the easiest ones. I completely agree with that because the purple, the rose, any sort of pinky tone or purpley tone, generally speaking, they fade out the easiest, the nicest, the most agreeable with a blonde. It's just going to get lighter and lighter, and then she'll feel like she's her bright blonde color again. So all we did here, I still used that rubber brush so that I wasn't pulling it down into her baby hairs, but I just sort of tapped that first ½ an inch. So this one is more like a shadow root, right? It comes a little bit further down. You can see more of that depth. This one is just more of like that tap root. So it's just barely tapped at that first ½ an inch. And it doesn't take any longer than doing a retouch does. So I think that's kind of the beauty in this, is it's something really fun, something different for spring. I think people are really excited to do something fun. So this is a really easy way, easy for you to do, easy for her to wear, easy to fade out if she never wants to do it again or if she just wants to do a different color the next time. So I love that. I think this is the most salonable, the most client friendly if they're a little bit nervous about color. So I'm going to talk about our middle of the road, middle maintenance. Now, something that I think is a lot of fun about this one, The only area that the color lives is in the bangs. That's why I put her hair up in a ponytail so you can really see it. And I'm gonna sort of separate out her hair. So if you come through and you look, this is just the color Chameleon Green by itself. I bleached her roots out with the Magic Blonde. So the Magic Blonde is one of our lighteners that has chamomile extracts in it. So it's going to be really comfortable for your client to have on their scalp, especially if they're not somebody who gets a bleach retouch and they're not used to that feeling. So she was just dark all over. All I did was separate out her bang section. And then I came through just near the face, did a little bit of a shorter root. Not quite as drastic. We didn't do a stationary guide as the first, the more higher commitment, the radioactive roots. So just a little bit of a root, and then as I got further back, we did a little bit longer of a root so that you can see it kind of when the bangs split. So if she puts her hair up in a ponytail, you can see from the side, you get this sort of fun action. But if she takes her hair down, and if she really just kind of styles the bangs, you don't notice it as much. So I think this is a lot of fun because it's like there but not there. It's easy to hide, but when you want to show it, it can be really bright. But again, the reason why I called this one sort of the medium maintenance is because you have to lighten the roots out. So I think that's where with clients it can start to feel like, well, do I want to recommend them to bleach their roots when they've never done this before? They're always, a 4 all over or whatever their formula is. But I think when you're keeping it just to one area, it's a really good kind of introduction. It's like our lilac pastel pop kicked up a notch. So all I did again was just section out her bangs and then bleach out the roots. Now, this is like the easiest bleach retouch you'll ever do because you don't have to worry about overlapping. You don't have to worry about a line of demarcation that you need to meet but not pass, right? So you just want to retouch the roots. If she came in and said, she just has her regular gray touch-up appointment booked, essentially the only timing difference between doing her regular touch-up and adding this is the time it takes to add the color Chameleon or the whatever color you're putting on right here, right? You can do it with a semi-color. You can do it with a brighter red. If you want to use one of our intense shades from semi-color, you can do that too. And then it's not even a direct dye. It's just your semi-color. You're just choosing a brighter shade, a brighter tone. So when you come through and do your retouch for everything else with your Tinta, 4.00 gray coverage, whatever it is, section this out, do bleach here, let it all process together, and then you just have to add the color. So in salon, it's super simple. It's super easy to kind of navigate without throwing a lot of extra timing in. But for the client, they get something that's a lot of fun, and you really get to have, the bright kind of spring trend. I want to see if I can, yeah. You get to have this bright spring trend, but again, it's not something where you feel like, oh my gosh, this is my whole head, right? I think this is so much fun. I wish everybody in the world wanted this one, but I think that this is something that's kind of like meet you halfway, still have some fun with it, but not shouting from across the room. I see some comments coming in. Do we have any questions?
We do. I'd wait for you to break. First, I'm not sure which one she's referring to. The one that you did the toner on. Do I have to do the toner and hot roots separately at the sink?
For the blonde. So
yes.
The biggest thing here is color Chameleon is meant to go on dry hair, where semi-color typically we're toning on wet hair. So what I would do if I wanted to do this all at the same time is just take her back to the chair and like blast dry the roots. If you really want to get full deposit of the color Chameleon, just blast dry the roots, tap this color in, and then you can pull your toner in. So color Chameleon's timing is 20 minutes, 30 minutes if you want a little bit more deposit, a little more of a bright like pop of color. So what I think is kind of nice about that is if you do your color chameleon, pop that in, and then you do your toner will process 15 to 20 minutes. So by the time that's done, the color chameleon has probably sat for like 25 minutes, it's had its time, and then the toner will process after that. If you don't dry the hair, if you just at the sink pop this on damp hair and then do your toner on damp hair, it will still deposit. You just might not see as much of a deposit as the color in your bowl because the water will dilute it a little bit, and you're also not going to get as much longevity, again, because the water is already in the hair, so you're not going to have as much color like stick to the hair. So you'll just get a different result that's a little shorter if you do it at the sink, but you still can do them at the same time. I hope that helps. Do you have other questions?
Yeah, here's another one. I'm just going to cliff note version this one. If the client wants to remove the color before it fades all the way out, what would your approach be to that, Alicia?
So I think it depends how deep the color is. There are a couple different options. So one, you can take our Clarify shampoo. So the Clarify shampoo is back bar only. It's not a retailable like client shampoo. It's a clarifying shampoo. Usually it's what you use when you're doing like a color cleanse or a bleach wash. So you can take clarifying shampoo, like if it were just this, I would just take clarifying shampoo and let it sit on her roots for like 10 minutes or so. If it's something where you need a little more than that, there are a few options. So number one, you can take Tinta 2000 without the booster. So Tinta 2000 is a bleach alternative. It's like a high lift blonde bleach alternative. So basically you're taking the alkalinity of a high lift blonde and then mixing it with your developer and using that to pull some of that color out. As we know, bleach can, when you take bleach and developer, it can sometimes push direct dyes further into the hair. So what you end up with is just a lighter version of that color, and then it can be harder to take out. So I find that if I can do it with clarifying shampoo or if I can do it with Tinta 2000, it's a lot easier on the hair. It's a lot more predictable. If it's something where she came in and she's like, just kidding, I don't want this color on my roots anymore, I want you to take it out. If it's a brighter color like this, I think this is something where you want to have the conversation before they leave, before it goes in, that it is a little bit higher commitment, because if I do this today and she comes back tomorrow, I'm not going to be able to get this back up to like white platinum blonde. But you can take, again, the Tinta 2000, you can take the clarifying shampoo, you can take a lightening powder, clarify shampoo, and water, no developer, and it will sort of break down the color and pull some of it off. But the key there is that you're not using developer, because developer is what will open the cuticle and give some of the direct dyes the opportunity to go further into the hair strand, and that's what we don't want. So when you go the bleach route, you're skipping the developer and just using that bleach to kind of get the surface stuff off. I think my best advice after that, like if it is this scenario, is get as much of this out as possible and then tone it with a semi-color so that you're creating more of a natural shade, and then she can just have a shadow root like mine. Then you can go back through and highlight that out, and it'll just be a lot easier of a transition than trying to get this all the way back up to white blonde right away. So a couple different options depending on how deep the color is, how long it's been in, how much you have to go, how much you have to fade it. Do we have any other questions?
We just had one in regards to if you had bleached the roots of the blonde ones. So I think you just can revisit that those were already blonde, right?
Yeah, these two mannequins were already blonde when I started. So they had been lightened all over, toned, and then I just applied the root color, the color chameleon. So if you have a client who's already blonde and they're coming in for a toner or a haircut, then you can just apply it. But that's where I think that rubber brush helps a lot, because you don't pull the color down in. This is the one where I lightened the roots out And again, all I did was just like I would have with a regular bleach touch-up. I didn't separate the sections with foil or cotton because it's just going on their roots and it's just this area, so I don't have to worry about, all the different panels of the head. So this was just a regular bleach touch-up, but only in the bangs, and then the green over top of it. I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
No.
No? Okay, cool. So, oh, I just said so loud that I heard the echo come through the phone, and I thought Jessica was like, wait, that was me. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of go over everything that we did here and reiterate some of what I think are the important takeaways. And if you have any takeaways or ideas that you can add, feel free to put them in through the comments. So for her, we started blonde already, and then it's just working off that round of the head, right? So find the high point where the head curves down. That's section 1. You can see it really well when I turn this to the side. So this is section 1, and then where that high point lives, that's where you'll get that second sort of pop right here, and then right where your head rounds back, that's where you'll get your pop back here, so that you get kind of those highs and lows. And again, this application, if you do it on a blonde with a shadow root, 7.18 in semi-color, level 7 ash brown, anything that you would shadow root, you don't have to keep the harsh line. You can kind of blend this in, but keep that same placement. And you can see from far away, if I did this with a shadow root and we blended the line, it still almost looks like she has highlights in there, even though it was just applying a root touch-up sort of in a creative way. So this is my favorite placement, my favorite application. And I think that this is something that can be applied to a lot of different hair colors, not just the roots. You can do this with your regular, gray coverage touch-ups. If you want to pull it down a little bit further, you can do it with the shadow root. You can do it with the radioactive, the pop roots if you want. This one, again, is our little pastel number. I had a really hard time not putting her hair in pigtails, just so you can see it. But again, I think this is the one that will be the most client-friendly, right? The most user-friendly, because again, it's not something that you have to really worry about taking out. You don't have to worry about retouching it. And if she wants a different color next time, she has room to do a different color next time. So this is our easy pastel pop, if you will. And then our last one here, again, this is just taking out those bangs. So it's the exact same placement as our radioactive root in a certain sense, because we're just going off that high point. It's just we're only doing the front piece, right? We're only doing the bangs. So let's say you have somebody who doesn't have bangs, but they still want something that feels like this. If you have a client with long hair, right? They don't want it all over, even if it's small. They want to be able to hide it from, their boss or whatever the case is. You can take this concept where it's just kind of like block coloring, but only the roots. You can take that concept and still do it with long hair, but maybe instead of taking that whole bang section, you just do the front hairline, right? Where in a traditional blonde with a shadow root, we leave the hairline out to be the brightest piece. Maybe instead of that, we just pop root with a pastel just around the face. So when the hair falls forward, you don't see it a ton. When you pull your hair back, you see it. You could do a half up number and show it off, but it's not something that you have to like really, really commit to. That's like pastel, low commitment, light. I think that's a really fun idea. And I know next week we have Amber Wishart and Victoria Kelly coming on, and they're going to talk about a couple different ways to do color blocking. So I think when you watch that live next week, you can kind of take, Cheetah's telling us what colors we know are coming in, and then we can take the pop root and look at some of the color blocking that that Amber and Victoria show you next week, and then you can kind of piece and place that way. So maybe you do whatever placement they show, but just the bottom has a pop root, just the top has a pop root. I think Billie Eilish made this famous for us, which I love, and I love that she went blonde, but it kind of made me laugh. I think everybody saw she went blonde a couple days ago, and I felt like, okay, cool, it's released now because I won't feel like I'm copying her if I do it, right? Because it's just a trend that's out in the world. And I do think that there is something, it's a very small story, but kind of how this whole thing originated with the black and the green as a stylist, I think is kind of an important lesson, a fun lesson, if you will. I watched an interview where she talked about why she chose that color. And essentially, it was an accident because she got her hair done and she said, she had been bleaching her hair for years and she said, I want to go this color. And then when they tried to go that color, pushed the hair too far and it broke. And she's telling this story in a client sense of like, oh my gosh, I didn't know what to do. And I knew I had bleached my hair a bunch, blah, blah, blah. But in the end, it was something that was a complete accident. She colors her hair black and literally missed a spot in the back, but the purple that was previously there showed up. So she's telling this story and she's like, oh, well, and then I thought that looked cool. Let's make the roots green. And as a stylist, that was something that I really liked because it was the epitome of taking something that felt like a mistake and turning it into something that ended up being this world famous hair color that's now setting trends, but it wasn't even planned. So I think about that sometimes when I'm behind the chair and I do something that maybe didn't turn out the way I thought it would, or maybe it didn't turn out at all. If you are open enough and creative enough to just be like, hey, let's pivot, hey, let's go this direction, then you can really make something cool out of something that at first wasn't even supposed to be that way. And then, now a year and a half later, we're doing classes on how to do that kind of color, even though it started as an accident. So I like that story to have in my back pocket as like it'll be okay. No matter what you think it's supposed to look like, you can always pivot and find something that's cool, even if it, made her hair break a little bit. That's what happened. Find the interview. It's very interesting. So that's all I have. If we don't have any more questions, do we have any more popping up?
We do not.
Okay, cool. That's all I have for you. I really hope that you try this. Go out, when you do this on your clients, even if you just try it on a mannequin to get kind of comfortable with it, tag us, tag me. I would love to see it. And then if you didn't catch Cheetah's live last week or any of the previous lives that we have from some of our team members, check out KeuneEducation.com. You can also go to our YouTube channel. You can watch all of the live videos. You can watch a lot of the education that we've done over the past year, which I think is a fantastic resource, just so you can kind of, take a day, watch 8 videos in a row and have a full class day. Or when you can't sleep, instead of scrolling through TikTok, you can watch a video on spring trends. And then next week, same time, same place, you will have Amber and Victoria talking about color blocking. So watch Cheetahs and then come here and then watch Amber and Victoria, and you'll have a whole thing coming into spring for new trends. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, tag us. I'm Alicia Dixon Hair. You can tag Keune and America. Check out the Keune Education website. There are so many helpful videos there. And then I hope I see you in the tagged photos and in the comments on Instagram. That's all. Have a good day, everyone. Happy birthday, Jessica.
Thank you.
Bye.